JSON schemas let you set up validation in IntelliSense for JSON files. Now, by default, VSCode will actually use the file name itself to determine what type of JSON file you're working with. So if you have a package.json file, for example, it will go and show suggestions for package.json and validate the properties you are using make sense. But you can actually use JSON schemas for any file using the special $schema property. So here in my JSON file, for example, it's just called x.json. So if I trigger IntelliSense, you'll see that the only suggestion I get here is for a single property called $schema. Now this lets me specify which schema is actually going to be applied to this document. So it's sort of a meta property. Let's go and trigger this. And for the property, you can see that when I type a quote sign here, it's actually going to suggest a bunch of different built-in schemas or default schemas. So one that I could use here is I could say that this file is actually a tsconfig file here. So I could go down and select the schema store tsconfig schema. And now when I go down and actually trigger suggestions, you can see that I have all of these suggestions from a tsconfig that are showing up. So the JSON extension behind the scenes is actually going and downloading the schema here and then building suggestions based on that schema. Now the cool thing about this is that you can actually go and point the schema to local files as well. So if you have a local schema that you are using, you can have the JSON extension go and use that instead. So let's take a look at doing that. So I'm going to go and I have a file here called schema.json. I'm going to switch over to that. And you can see that in this file, I've set up the schema to be the generic JSON schema. So this is how you can this is the schema that helps you write other schemas that apply to JSON files. And here inside of this, I've actually set up a single property that is called test, and it is a string with a simple description here. Now to apply that to our JSON file, all we have to do is go into the schema property here, and I'll give it a relative path to the file that we're interested in. So I'll say schema.json. So again, just pointing at that file there. And now when I go and I trigger IntelliSense, you can see that it is suggesting the test property here. It even has the test string description that was showing up. So we can go and enter this. And if I tried to enter something like a number here, you can see that it's actually highlighting that because it does expect a string instead of a number. So you can use these local JSON schemas, or you can use all of the ones that have been built for Schema Store to really make sure that your JSON is following the right format and also helping out with IntelliSense and things like that.